Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Whole Soul Mastery and Whole Soul School and Foundations joint podcast series. I'm here again today with Dr. Paul Panzica. We're going to be talking about the autumnal equinox and many of the things that Paul sees in the map of the astrology and the insights that are coming through that only you, Paul, can bring in the way that you do. I mean, we all have our unique gifts and talents. And I am so grateful that you share them with me and with those who tune in to these podcasts. So, first, I want to say welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me.
Yes,
Always
and
a pleasure.
it's always a pleasure. And we know that we are going to go where we're led. You have many topics, many things, themes that you've got that you just shared about in your most recent blog article, The Castle in the Sky. So I'm going to turn it over to you to have you lead us off about, what you're seeing in the astrology and what you're seeing just as themes for humanity coming up in these times.
Well, once again, thank you for having me. And that's the theme for the fall equinox, which is the manifestation of not one, not two, but three castles in the sky. And I'm not making it up. There it is. There's a lot of threes there too. There's three cradles, which I didn't mention. There's three yads. I didn't mention those. And there's three grand trines. Didn't mention those either. There's too much there. There's for one person to actually make a comment on. So, I take it as what stands out in what I'm looking at and what speaks to me. And that's one of the beautiful things about astrology is that the best way to interpret it is in a group of people who are aware or attuned to the energies of this of whatever it is that you're looking at. Yeah, I like to look at the seasons, and I like to look at other astrological events, like eclipses and stuff like that. But mainly, I like to focus on the seasons. That's what I've pledged to myself, as I would look at it 4 times a year. I do feel that there's a cadence to the seasons that's based on not just the astrology, but the time that we're living in is spaced out in these 4 different seasons throughout the year. Then that's just a fact. So there's a significance to solstice and equinox, and they kind of set the pattern for the next 3 months of our life. And so we're looking now at just a few days before the coming equinox, the autumnal equinox, and this pattern that's there is it's called a castle formation. It's a castle formation. Yeah, and so there's not, like I said, there's not one, there's not two, there's three castle formations, three variations overlapping each other, and pointing all in the same direction. And so there's a great significance to it, I believe. First of all, we talked about this before, this idea of three, or twice, or once great, twice great, thrice great.
Right.
And so that's what strikes me right off the bat, is that it's so important. It's not just once, it's not just twice, it's being reiterated 3 times, in this thrice great kind of pattern, or this 3-time pattern. So it indicates that there's a very powerful spiritual energy that's behind all of this. There always is, right? And so we're looking at this pattern that's superimposed upon itself 3 different times. And so just to remind you again, what thrice great is that this idea that just living in this life once, in this world, in this plane of existence, is considered a great accomplishment to souls who have not experienced it yet. I don't know about souls that have experienced yet, but certainly for souls who are not like living on this plane of existence anymore, just to get here is an extremely great accomplishment. Twice great is when you start coming to unity consciousness, when you start seeing a bigger picture, when you start moving past the illusionary, manifestations of conditioned reality. And the only way that we really can do that is when we start moving not outwardly, but inwardly back and start discovering the truth that exists within ourselves. And really, that really is almost, you can say it's coming to Christ to a certain degree. It's coming into the logos, into a higher level awareness. I think it's when the soul and the spirit start to manifest themselves, and we start going towards movement towards this unification of collapsing dualities. 3 times great is, well, it's the basically the epitome of ascension. It's when a soul ascends into the heavens and becomes a god. And so that what we're looking at again is like there's many characters within our mythologies that have been made thrice great. Usually it's done through the spiritual realms for something that they did that was very some great achievements that they accomplished in their life, and then they were made thrice great. And when that happens, generally they're put up in the heavens, and there's a symbol of them that's constantly affecting us or has a constant influence upon us as a collective. And that's what thrice great is. It's like when Asclepius was put into the heavens, or when Hercules was put into the heavens. And so if you look up into the heavens, you'll see, or Ganymedes was put up into the heavens. You'll see that there's areas of, or constellations in the heavens that is constantly affecting us. It's constantly bombarding us, or there's a constant presence of that particular energy that is the summation of who they were, that has an influence upon us. And that's what thrice great actually means. It's actually the symbols of the constellations themselves. And almost every god or goddess or person that ascended into heaven was then marked in the heavens as a constellation. And in that part of the sky, their presence is constantly there. It's constantly influencing us. So in this sense, the castle is, in this instance, thrice great. There's 3 of them all superimposed upon each other, and it's having this effect upon all of us in this fall season. So it's literally, when I saw it, the first thing that came to my mind was, well, what does it mean when there's a castle in the sky, right? What does castle in the sky actually mean? Why? And so that means that somebody has grand visions, grand dreams, but it's in the sky, So it's like it's ungrounded, it's unfounded. You have these grandiose ideas. Building castles in the sky it's basically like a flight of fantasy, right? And so it's used in many instances as a derogatory, way as a flight of fancy. You're building castles in the sky. You're ungrounded to reality, right? Well, there it is. It's there now, and the castle's in the sky. And then I started realizing, well, wait a minute. For some reason, I don't know why I steered towards this. I found this beautiful quote by Henry David Thoreau, who was a transcendentalist. A really beautiful, one of the first philosophical movements that started, that was truly an American philosophical movement. It was the first one, the Transcendentalists. And what they valued more than anything else was creating a sense of independence regarding the discernment of truth. That was the most vitally important thing that to the transcendentalists was building a foundation, a spiritual foundation that was based upon a higher sense of truth that would empower the individual to be able to discern it. And also the transcendentalists, Thoreau was, and all the transcendentalists were very much connected to the earth. And so they were able to sense a spiritual presence within the natural world. That's in many ways is where they looked for this spiritual presence. They didn't look for it, they felt it. They lived within it, right? But their problem was, or what they saw as a problem, was that there were other institutions and other forces within the world that was beginning to separate us from our connection, our natural connection to nature and to the spirit, right? And so what it was doing was it was creating a boundary or barrier between ourself and our natural connection to the spirit. And so they saw this back in the pre-Civil War, and so they saw this well over 100 years ago, 150 years ago. They saw all these things happening, and of course that they were extraordinarily correct in how our separation from nature led to our inability to discern truth in a natural state, in a fundamental natural way. And so we've become dependent upon, let's say, institutions or other organizations or other people to disseminate to us what they think is truth or what they are telling us is truth.
Mm.
One of the things that Thoreau said, which really blew me away when I read it, was, like I said, building castles in the sky could be, this idea of a flight of fancy. It could be putting somebody down for, being ungrounded, right? But Thoreau said no. He said that the only place that castles can be built is within the sky, right? This is because in order to create a castle, you have to connect to this higher state of awareness just to design it, just to connect to it, just to envision what it could actually be. And so that's how anything is actually constructed. If you've ever built anything or ever created anything, you have to go into the spiritual realm for inspiration.
Yeah.
Or the spiritual realm will inspire you while you're not even looking for it, and it just will give it to you. It will give you this information. And so what Thoreau is basically saying is that in order to manifest it in the physical reality, is you have to have a very strong foundation. But that foundation it has to be grounded, but it also has to be based on truthful principles. It has to be based on discipline, and it has to be based upon your capacity to discern, how that can actually be manifested. So, Thoreau's basic viewpoint was castles can only come from the sky. They can only come from heaven. They can only come from the spiritual realm. But in order for us to manifest it, we are the ones who ground the idea into the earth. And we can only manifest it as individuals who can discern truth, who can discern, who have the structure. And what's really interesting, and the know-how to do this, what's really interesting is one of the themes of the castle itself is this really interesting union or conjunction between Neptune and Saturn. And that's exactly what that energy is. That Saturn is a very confining, in many ways, but it also gives us discipline, and it also provides structure, right, and force to get things done in the physical realm. Neptune is all about seeing deeply into the spiritual realm. It's all about imagination. It's all about inspiration. It's all about very much spiritually charged vision, right? And it turns out that both of these energies are connected to each other, and they're a major part of what this castle formation actually is. These castles, the castle's there now, which is very interesting because we're in the fall season, right? And so the fall season is, I had mentioned this before, a major celebration, which is missing out of most people's lives, occurs in the fall. And this time around the end of September, the early first week of October, and it's called Michaelmas. And what is the actual celebration? And the celebration is it's in honor of the archangel, and it's a celebration that that acknowledges fortitude and courage, right, and our ability to stand up to deception and to injustice, and to live within truth and righteousness. That was what the whole celebration is about. So it invokes the spirit of the knights and the maidens and the courts and the castle, right? And so there it is. There's this castle that has appeared now, that will appear at the fall equinox, and so as I contemplated this, well, first of all, the castle itself in astrology it's not a lot written about it, So there's a lot written about other formations. We know a lot about oppositions and trines and squares, and we know more about kites and rectangles and other things. But when we have the castle, there's very little written about it. So what I do know about the castle is that if it's in your natal chart, the castle's in your natal chart, it identifies you as a seer, a person who can see deeply into the spiritual realm, who can sense things that other people can't sense. And so the castle itself is conveying to those who are willing to receive it seership into a very dangerous time that we're moving into right now, right? So not only is it a bastion and a fortress, it also conveys to a seership into all of the confusion that usually occurs this time of the year anyway. I mean, it always does. And this is a very weak time of the year for the light, and a very strong time of the year for the darkness. And so we have these, holidays that go further into this season, such as Halloween and All Saints Day and All Souls Day. But this is a time where the darkness is really ascending into the world. You can feel it. You can feel it, that darkness does descend. And so the castle does offer us, let's say, a bastion or a fortification, or an edifice that the spirit is providing us to stand our ground, and provides us the tools, let's say, that we need for the oncoming darkness that always befalls us, right? And so there is that. And then I think I had mentioned also Daryl Anka's. I heard him say once the Bashar, who I think he's awesome. But he mentioned that somebody was talking about abundance, and wealth, and and as Bashar, he says the definition of that is is that if you're wealthy and you're living in abundance, when you have everything you need exactly when you need it.
Mm.
It's not like you have a big stockpile of stuff that you're going to go into your larder and pull some stuff out because you have it. Or no, he says the Spirit provides it for you. So it's having exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. And so that's kind of what this castle is. Like I said, it's difficult to look at it in pieces as much as it is to really accept it for what it is. It's multiply aspected. It's all these different intricate aspects to it. So it's exactly what we need, exactly when we need it, is what it is. It provides all of what we need at this moment in time. Don't worry about it. Like I said, it's almost like, well, somebody's giving me a horse. Let me look in the mouth and see how old it is and see what its weakness. No, you could do that if you want. And I did go through some of that, looking at the different aspects of the castle. But in a sense, it is exactly what we need, exactly when we need it. So and it's being bequeathed to you, right? You're inheriting it. It's given to you if you're willing to accept it as a gift. So who inherits a castle? Who gets a castle? Seriously, who is fit to live in a castle? And I would say that the answer to that would be a person who is noble, a person who is a sovereign unto themselves. So the only person fit to live in the castle is a sovereign, right? They're the person who owns the castle, who keeps the castle.
It's a frequency
So
thing.
in order,
It's a frequency.
it is it's a major frequency thing. It's a major frequency thing. So, if you're not in resonance to this, it's just another day. There's been so many of these major transitions that we go through regarding the cycles of the seasons that I've been looking at for the last, I don't know how many long I've been looking for at this, a long time, 7, 8 years, maybe. I've been looking at this, and everything that I see is astounding to me because it's the Spirit that's speaking to me in this really amazing language of light and love that's always been there for us if we're willing to embrace it, to accept it, to understand it. It's there for us to accept.
So
So
interesting. Just like when you say that, it makes me think of, I was talking about this recently with some people, but where Christ, when he was doing his miracles and healing people, he would ask, "Do you want to heal?" I mean, some people were asked, "Do you want to heal?
you want to be healed?
Do you
Yes,
want to be
you ask
healed?"
them that.
And then they say yes, but there is this consent. There's this yes, I'm ready. I desire this, right? It's the action of accepting the offer, right? It's stepping in. It's an engagement. I guess I'm saying you engage, and not everybody's ready to engage with it,
It's
and
also a
some are.
responsibility,
Yes, yes,
right? I mean, you're being offered this castle, which is a great responsibility because in order to be able to accept it, you have to be your own sovereign.
yes.
And many people don't want to take that next step.
Can you define
And
that
it's
for people who would be listening? What does a sovereign mean to you, Paul?
all right, so we're living right now. A sovereign is a king or a queen, a person who is a symbol of authority, who carries authority within them. So a sovereign is a ruler in a sense, but you have to be a sovereign unto yourself, which means that you are the ruler of yourself,
Yes.
right? And no one else, yourself, right? And so the castle is both collective and individual. So it's an individuated castle, but it's also collective. So the castle, the way I described it, then it opened up a floodgate of a vision that I had at one time. So there was a time, just a very brief vision, years ago, where it was late fall, it was getting close to the holidays, and the vision just hit me. It was real fast, real quick. But the vision was this: oh, at one time I possessed a castle. I owned a castle. It was my castle, right? And so when did that happen? Well, whenever castles existed, and so I can speculate as to when it was, and most likely it was probably around the medieval times. And the castle itself was a focal point for the community. And so it felt like my castle because it was my castle, but it was also everyone else in the community's castle. So it wasn't just mine per se, it was mine, but the feeling of ownership, the feeling of connectedness to it was stronger than your connection, say, to your own home. I mean, it was this beautiful collective space that everyone contributed to its welfare. It was a safe haven. But it was also a place that we honored the seasons, and a place where we also honored our celebrations was in this space. It was in this space at a time where castles were almost like cathedrals. They were citadels. It wasn't really where they were making these super elaborate cathedrals yet. It was just the beginning. The castle itself was the foundation of the community.
Wow.
So, right. So there was a sense that everyone belonged to it, and everyone was contributing to it. And so what is the symbol of, let's say, ruined castles that have been destroyed? And the answer is that, well, during the medieval times, or during the 12th to 13th centuries, there was a genocide that was unleashed against people who owned these castles, who had these communities, and they were destroyed. They were wiped out, and it was a long, protracted war of attrition that lasted for a century, right? And so these castles are still there. The ruins of the castles are still there, mainly in southern France. And so that was, to me, what this is all suggesting is that it suggested to me something that, I mean, maybe it's a stretch. I mean, you could look at this and disagree with me, and that's perfectly fine. But the castle itself suggested to me the Cathars, or they call them Albigensians, the people of that area, that community, which were very open communities. They called it the community of love, or the church of love. And they weren't perfect. No one was perfect, but they were much more tolerant and much more aligned to the teachings of Sophia and Jesus, or Magdalene and Jesus, than any other community had ever existed before or after their existence, right? And so they were this community of tolerance and they prized knowledge and wisdom, and they prized common sense, and they prized justice, and they prized freedom, and they prized all of these things, right? But they were too prosperous, and eventually it triggered a conflict with the controlling religion of that time, which unleashed an onslaught against him and eventually wiped him out, exterminated. Interesting, though, is that a prophecy was given, allegedly when the last perfect was killed, and they basically the last Cathar adept was burned at the stake. I think it was like 1321, August, some morning in August, something. Or it was something like that, and he was burned at the stake. And in his last dying breath, he basically said, he gave us a prophecy, and the prophecy is that when the laurel turns green, he says in 700 years, the laurel will turn green on the ashes of the martyrs. In 700 years, the laurel will turn green on the ashes of the martyrs, what he says. So he couldn't say much more than that because he was dying, he was burning up, and that was the last thing he ever said. And so what the heck does that mean, right? I mean, it's kind of cryptic. But what he's basically saying is that in 700 years, this movement will rise again. And so if we do the math, 1321, 700, it will rise in 2021, right? And so what did we see in 2021? Right. And what I saw, and I think what I really like, what really gets me excited, I'm not the only one who saw it. Many other people who read astrology and many other people who are just reading the signs have been saying that, the end of 2020 which was the last few days of 2020, was marked right at the winter solstice by what we call the Grand Conjunction. And the Grand Conjunction, some people were saying that was like the Star of David. That was like the star, the star, not the Bethlehem star, right? And so they were basically saying that this was a sign that the age was ending and the new age was beginning. And so when was that? Well, that was at the end of 2020, and 2021 was the year that we moved into, or we were beginning our movement into this age, this Aquarian age, which exactly coincides with the prophecy of the Cathar, who basically stated that in 700 years, the laurel turns green on the ashes of the martyrs. That's a powerful statement. The laurel turns green on the ashes of the martyrs. What does it mean, right? What does this amazing statement mean? Do you have any questions at all before I keep going, or?
No, I'm taking it in, and I'm sure anybody that's
Oh,
listening,
okay.
like, wow, the precision of that is like, wow, wow, here we are.
Yeah.
It
Wow.
is,
That's all I can say is I'm not making this stuff up. And there's no Hollywood writer that's making this stuff up. It just is.
it just
And that's
is.
what I'm saying is it's so amazing to see prophecy playing out through the astrology, through the mythology, and the only people that aren't seeing it are the people that are going to that can't see that truth. They'll deny it. They're the ones who won't accept the castle because they don't believe that there's actually a castle in the sky, right? They have no interest. I think we mentioned right before we went on camera that a lot of things are going on right now,
Yes.
and there is a great transition And eventually we will transition probably out of this reality. There's no doubt about that. And that's what the Cathars were all about, or we call them the heretics or the Albigensians, or call them whatever you want. They saw this world as an illusion. They saw this world as a dark illusion. They saw the soul as incorruptible. They saw the soul as timeless, and they saw the soul that as a, let's say, a vessel for the spirit that came from another plane of existence, right? I mean, that's really what they saw. So they saw that the world down here was dark and there was full of deception and violence and all of these other things. So they saw it as a false reality. And they also saw that the gods or God that was usurped or co-opted by the shadow forces that were controlling everything wasn't God. So in the same sense, they were like Gnostics, and they basically saw all of these, the hypocrisy of religion, and they also saw the distortion of religion, and they also understood that that organized religion was based on controlling principles. So they were, and they didn't do this tactfully. No one was very tactful back in the 11 and 1200s. It was a everyone was fighting for their lives, or they were fighting for the truth, or they were fighting, and we did it in different ways. I mean, we were sword fighting back then, and we were beating each other with maces and launching catapults and crossbows against each other. We were fighting over these ideas back then.
Right. Wow.
Right. So
the spiritual battle is evident in so many periods of time.
Right. It's just changed. It just changed its nature, but it's still roaring right now.
Right now.
It's going on very strongly right now. Right. And so we're still in, but we can't fight violence with violence. That was what we're supposed to learn out of all of this. And so the prophecy of the Cathars, and so 700 years, and so we're past that point now. And so we're past the point where we're transitioning into this different age, right?
What does that mean?
And this idea,
the laurel turns green in this age.
The laurel turns green, right? And I think that's what it means. The laurel's turning green. Now, what is the real definition behind that? And that's woo. It's deep, and it transcends cultures. That's the really cool part about it. It transcends cultures. Now, you want to talk about transcending cultures. And when I wrote about this, don't let me forget transcending cultures. But I look at that part of the world where the castles were built, and the Occitan Peninsula, that southern part of France, northern part of Italy, northern part of Spain, in this area, I consider it the cradle of civilization. And a lot of people would disagree with me. They would say, well, no, cradle of civilization, that's Africa, right? Well, listen, it's the cradle of civilization because it is in those caves, in that mountain range in the Pyrenees, where those cave paintings exist, right? And so the earliest, let's say, human expressions, and I think there were humans on the planet hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years before this. But the culture that emerged from that part of the world became the Celts. Those were the Celts. They were called Cro-Magnon or Cro-Magnon people. And they were the ones that were drawing these beautiful, beautiful pictures on the cave walls. And some of those pictures are 50,000 years, maybe older. But it's in the same part of the world where later Mary Magdalene comes with her brother and her sister from Jerusalem. They were cast adrift in the Mediterranean. They weren't executed, but they were committed to the sea by people in Jerusalem because they didn't know what to do with them. This was after the crucifixion. And they were carried over to the shores of, southern France. And that's where they started creating churches. And her brother was Lazarus, but he was really John. He was the writer of the Gospel of John. And so and his sister was Martha, who helped him establish all of these churches. And so it was very interesting that Christianity comes into, or let's say the impulse of Christ, or those teachings, or Magdalene and Jesus's impulse comes right into that part of the world, right? Into that part of the world. And it was in that part of the world where the natural religion of the Celts became married to the logoic teachings of Christ Jesus. So you had something that was absolutely unique in this part of the world, which is what inspired them to create these communities of love in love. They call it the truth of love. That's what they called it, the truth of love. And so in the truth of love were established this community, and it flourished for 1,000 years before they started running into problems, right? And so that was really I think the basis for not just this Cathar community and this community of love that was established in this part of the world and was flourishing by the 1100s, 1200s. But it was also prehistoric in the sense that that's where modern humans came from. That's where they sensed that modern humans came from, that part of the world. Now, maybe there was genetic manipulation, and certainly there must have been other humans living on the earth too, because we're talking about Lemurian experiences and Atlantean experiences, which were occurring around that same time. But the Celtic culture comes from that part of the world. It comes from those caves. And so that was like in this nature religion, which honored the divine feminine. And so the Celts spread all over. They were living in Europe, and they were living in North Africa, Middle East, and in Central Europe. They spread all over. And so there was basically they were in Greece, and they were in Italy. They were all over the place. And so this nature religion, or natural religion, the Celts spread all over. That was also the basis of the Greco-Roman experience. And so the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, they at one time there were no gods but one, and that was Mother Earth. Actually, two, maybe Skyfather, but that was it. So there's a prehistoric part of ancient Greece that was very Celtic, which only recognized Gaia, the mother Earth, right? So now the laurel wreath, or the laurel tree, which is also called a bay tree, or a sweet bay tree. And so bay leaf that we use to cook with is actually from the laurel tree. It's a laurel tree, right? All right. So Apollo was what Apollo does is, and I can't remember the actual reason why he's incited to do this, but he winds up getting into a conflict with Python. Python is the dragon of Gaia. and Gaia is the mother of Mother Earth, right? Python is her dragon, and Python is what they call a Dracaena, a Dracaena, a Dracaena, which means she was a female dragon. So I really wish I could remember the reason why Apollo is going after her, but they get into this huge conflict, and Apollo kills her. He like fires 100 arrows into her, and he kills this dragon. And it was not a good thing for him to do this because it was Gaia's dragon. And anytime a dragon is murdered or killed, it's a big deal in the spiritual realm because the dragon belongs to a god. It can only exist in service to a god. So when the dragon is killed, what I mean, it's Mother Earth's god. The whole pantheon is really upset about this. You know, you shouldn't have killed the dragon, Apollo. So and he has to repent for it. And so the dragon is killed at Delphi. And which is considered the umbilical cord of the earth. And so if you go there, you see all these boulders and stuff strewn around, and perhaps it's the remnants of the dragon that he kills. I don't know. But he's charged to create the temple at Delphi, which is where the oracle of Delphi exists, and where the Pythia, who are the ancient priestesses of Python, exist. And he has to provide the structure, he has to provide the protection, he has to provide everything for them, their safety. So that's how he has to atone for what he did, right? So it's an interesting story, and by this I mean that it means something more than just an interesting movie script.
Yeah.
It means something. It means that at this time, whatever this time was a further separation between the masculine and the feminine divine. So the divine masculine and the divine feminine were further cleaved through this conflict. All right.
Yeah.
So there's a further and further separation because the dragon was feminine. The dragon was a female, and the dragon is a feminine force. So this is what a lot of people don't realize is that Gaia, Sophia, and Magdalene are all connected, right? And so they say that Sophia is, or even Magdalene, who was the woman or the human vessel that carried the creational energies of Sophia, the goddess, is considered the mother of all dragons. You see, so yeah, it's all connected. The mother of all dragons, the Pythia, the Python, they're all feminine priestesses. It's all feminine earth energy. You think about Mother Nature and the wild Mother Nature and all the power of Mother Nature is a dragon force, and it exists. So in a sense,
Wasn't just
Apollo
an
tried.
attack then on the dragon that I can't pronounce its name, the female dragon, but it seems like there was
Dracaena,
a
Dracaena,
Dracaena,
Dracaena, yeah,
right? It was an
Dracaena,
attack
yeah.
on divine feminine energy itself.
You could say that it was, or you can say that he was trying to tame it. You know, maybe there's an idea that throughout human history, we go through these ages and we go through these cycles. And at one time, we went through the age of the mother, of the age of the divine feminine, which preceded the age of the father.
Okay.
All right. So in the age of the divine feminine, everything's great. Starts out always with the struggle. We get to the apex, which is in the middle of the age, and everything's working fine. And then we get to the end of the age, and everything is chaotic and crazy. So, in a sense, the divine feminine energy needed to be tamed, because if you don't tame the divine feminine energy, what happens is you wind up with Amazonian tribes of warring females when there's no masculine energy to counterbalance it. And so and nature runs amok, right? And so that mythology could suggest Apollo's attempt to try to tame it or control it. But in the process, he slays the dragon because she was a threat, right? But it was still grieved by the whole pantheon, including Apollo himself. He recognized that. But you know what? That's what conflict is about. Sometimes you can't avoid it. Sometimes it's ordained to happen. So that's what happened there. Now we're in an age that's very technologically based, where the masculine energy is run amok, right? So you can have a world where the natural energies are running amok, and you wind up with this Amazonian type of jungle existence where passions and emotions rule, or you can have a technocracy which enslaves everyone in a spiritless environment, unnatural environment, a controlling environment, an enslaving environment where the feminine is not only enslaved, but we're trying to exterminate it. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to wipe out anything that's feminine. So that's where we're at on the other end of things, right?
Interesting.
So, yeah. So, of course, you can't live on either polarity.
Right.
The Church of Love that was in that part of southern France, that was inspired by Jesus Magdalene, that was inspired by Christ Sophia energies that they brought into it, were in balance to each other. And that's what the archons fear the most. That's why there's always a genocide waged against Gnosis, because Gnosis is balancing the energies both within and externally. That's why they hate it so much. That's why there's always a genocide that's unleashed against it.
Wow.
So Apollo grieved over the death of Python, and after that he was a loser. I mean, he never really recovers from this. He loses his mojo. He falls in love with one of the priestesses of Pythia, a priestess of Python. Pythia, and he wants her, and she doesn't want to have any part of him. He's like, no, you're out of balance, and I don't know. I know what usually happens when a god takes on a mortal as a consort. It usually doesn't end well. And I can only think of one instance where it ended well, and it usually doesn't. So she asks Gaia for protection. And so Gaia protects her by transforming her into a laurel tree. So she's the laurel tree, and this priestess' name was Daphne. So Daphne is transfigured or transformed into the laurel tree, and so of course Apollo he's pretty narcissistic anyway, but he's so upset that he creates a laurel wreath, and so the laurel wreath is what he creates to console him. And it becomes a symbol of high achievement. The laurel wreath becomes a symbol of the highest level of wisdom, the highest level of achievement in the ancient Greek world. There was something called the Pythian Games, which were held at Delphi or near Delphi in honor of Apollo. And so it wasn't just sports. It was like music, and it was plays. It was all kinds of cool things that were going on. And the winner was granted a laurel wreath, right? That was what they were granted.
Wow.
So the laurel represents enlightenment and wisdom, is what it represents. So now, we have this experience that kind of like devolves into from ancient Greece to Rome and to let's say all of the colonies of the Roman Empire eventually, which is what southern France was at that time. And then you wind up now with another experience that occurs throughout the last age, the age of the fish, the age of Christ Jesus, the age of Pisces, the age of imprisonment, the age of martyrdom, the age of suffering. A lot of things were going on during this time, right? And so the age of the Crusades, right? The age of the Inquisition, all of these things were occurring during that time. And so what the last Cathar was able to determine was that the age wasn't over with yet, and what he was predicting was the end of the age, and that not only were there people who were martyred before him, like him, but there will be many more that occurred after him, right? And then what he's saying is that when the laurel turns green, right, in 700 years, when the laurel turns green on the ashes of the martyrs. And so who were the martyrs? And the martyrs were all of those Gnostic souls who lived multiple lives throughout the last age, who learned their lessons through these trials and tribulations, and acquired their pearls, through this experience. So, and I wrote another essay a while back, which was called it was about the third incursion. I think we even talked about it together and we did a video on it. But that was also in the Gnostic scriptures, is that when the presence of Christ Sophia comes into the earth in this truth of love, manifests onto the earth, it's going to be too disrupting for the archons and the shadow forces, and so it's going to have to be withdrawn. And so it was withdrawn during the time of the Cathars, and the genocide ensued, and all kinds of issues will follow from all of those things. But the first time I believe was the Gnostics. There was a genocide unleashed against them. We don't have much to remember them by, but the Cathars we do. And now the third incursion is occurring now. But in the scriptures, it says that the third time, the truth of love will not be withdrawn. That it is here now to manifest because the age has shifted. So we're now shifting into another age. And so the reference to the laurel is a reference to higher wisdom manifesting in balance in Christ Sophia through the presence of all of these Gnostic souls who have lived through all of these tragedies that have now manifesting into the world today, who carry within them this higher sense of truth, this higher sense of justice, and so I think that's what the reference is all about.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so the seekers, that's those seers for seership who
Seership.
inherit the
Yes.
castles.
The
Maybe
seers who
those
inherit.
Gnostics in form now,
I believe
right?
so. I believe so. But they're the only ones that are going to see the signs at the beginning. They're the only ones because they've been seeing those signs in sequential lives for at least 1,000+ years. So they might not know it, but when they see it, it triggers. Like I said, I saw the castle, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh wait, I had that castle vision too. So it's, and there's gotta be plenty of us around. They said that they slaughtered in that war 1 million souls. So there's at least 1 million, if not many more, because we're constantly coming back and forth, and we're living in and out of this reality, which as defined by the Gnostics, as defined by the heretics of the Middle Ages, it's an illusionary reality. It is totally and utterly illusionary.
Mm, mm.
And it's here for us to learn through these isolated experiences, as we are up against these dark shadow forces, to learn all of what the evil can teach us. And it can teach us a lot. But its energy is not dissipating. It's running out of juice. It doesn't have, once their secrets are exposed, and you can't, it's over
The
with.
power is in
And
the
and
cloak
so
of darkness, right? And then once the light is shining on it and more people see it, right? It starts with a core group of people who recognize the patterns through time.
yes,
But that is a frequency that anchors, that I think opens a higher sight for other people who are just on the cusp of seeing it too. It activates. Yeah. Yeah. And the cloak of darkness is removed. The veil is lifted, right? Yeah.
yeah, and the veil is thinning and thinning and thinning and thinning and thinning, and that's what seership is,
Mm.
to be able to see beyond the veil, right? And so you're being gifted with this, but there's all kinds of crazy scenarios that are being played out by the archonic, controllers in the shadows, that's losing its magic, because it's they can't veil it anymore, because they're running out of time, number one, and number two, people are becoming more and more aware of their methods.
Yeah.
But understand that there's nothing that's happening, that's being reported in the media, that's disconnected to their agenda. It's all connected, all of it. And that includes the mainstream media, and it includes the alternative media, which is becoming more and more mainstream.
Mm.
Because everything is monetized. So if you don't want to monetize it, like somebody that we all know very well, they'll put a bullet through you, they'll murder you, because accepting the money is accepting the agenda.
Mm.
Right?
Mm.
And so if you don't accept the money, if you refuse the money and try to maintain your independence, you're not allowed to exist. So that young man that was murdered last week was very much a Gnostic soul in that sense, because he understood the consequences, I'm sure of it, as any Gnostic would. Because what happened to the Gnostics? They understood the consequences. That's what I also said in the Cathars, the Albigensians, the heretics. None of them were converted. You can't convert them. Once you see the truth, you cannot betray yourself. You won't allow yourself to
Right.
betray yourself.
Right.
Once you can't, you won't accept it. And so, because you also understand that the world is illusionary, so it's not really that important anyway. My soul is much more valuable than what any external money or wealth can buy it.
Mm.
It can't be done, right? Because there's things that are much more powerful and much more valuable than all the money that, let's say, a leader in the Middle East would be willing to give you
Mm.
for for your compliance. right? So, yeah, I mean and so that's the new way now, is just to buy everyone onto your into your corporation, which is now trying to take over the earth. And they do that in our profession too. They come in, they buy up practices, and it's all based hedge funds, on on capitalistic, risk capitalistic ventures, or whatever it is, where you have all of these people that own stock in the company. And so they basically have taken that scheme, and they've turned it, or unleashed it. They've been doing this for decades, onto not just major medical institutions or hospital networks or insurance companies. Now they're going after all the small independent, and it's not just doctors' offices, it's dentists, it's anything. It's dry cleaners. It's everything is
Owning the
becoming
world, trying
monetized.
to own, yeah.
Right. And so that the bottom line is if a corporation owns it and the CEO runs it, then whatever decisions are made have to be made with the investors first, the investors' interest first, because they're the ones that are putting their money into the system. It's totally screwed up, because you think about the individual investors that are investing into these investment companies. The fact is that 51% of it is owned by only one person or one group. So they've set it up to protect the people that really control things. And who are the people that really control things? The archons and in the shadows that have their hands in armaments and energy and everything else, pharmaceuticals and insurance. And it's all run by a small group of people that are still trying to control all of us.
So tell us again,
So
the
you
laurel leaf, the laurel tree, when in 700 years, which is basically now, what was he saying? So given that looks like they're succeeding in the control, but since we're in a complete illusion, when we're
the laurel leaf, the laurel turns green on the ashes of the martyrs.
now martyrs. So is it the
Okay.
martyrs rising, the
Yeah.
knowers who know?
Yeah.
That's
The
what
presence
flips the
of.
script.
Uh-huh. And I think also that the age which is transforming is transitioning itself now. So yes, I mean they're going all out. They're going all out. So we see political assassinations all over the place that are happening now. We see frank dissent. I mean, not dissent, deceptions,
Mm.
lies built upon lies. There was a multi-million person march in London last week, and they downsized that to 100,000 people when it was more like 3 million people that again are rising against this control. So the wars that are going on and the usurpation of our own country by a foreign nation. It's all happening right now in front of our eyes. And
Yes.
it's even worse than that. It's even worse than that. Keep in mind, nothing is happening haphazardly. Nothing is happening by chance. Everything in the media is following a narrative. It's all connected, including the comets that they're seeing out there in space, allegedly. That's all connected too. They wouldn't be spending so much time on the comets. They wouldn't. And I was watching a video last week or the week before last about a UAP that they fired at, a Hellfire missile was shot at. Right? Did you see this video?
No, no.
So here's this blob, which is the UAP, and they're giving congressional testimony. This was just this month. So there was this thing that was flying Of course, it's blotted out. You don't get a clear picture of it. It's just a blob on a what looks like a heads-up screen on a F-22 fighter or whatever it is. They don't give you a clear picture. They just give you a blob that's being tracked by an advanced, let's say, American fighter, right? And so they shoot a Hellfire missile at it. Hellfire missile goes at it, goes right through it, and it just keeps going. And the blob breaks up into 3 other pieces, come off the blob, and they keep flying. It never slows down. All right, so this is a big deal. They're making a big deal about this. This was on, on network news, and they were giving congressional testimony about this. And you have people in the Air Force that allegedly, supposedly know the truth, and they're standing there under oath, swearing. Well, what do you think? What could this be? Is this what was this thing, and where did it come from? And they're giving testimony, and they're swearing that there's nothing that they're aware of in any military upon any part of the earth that can withstand a Hellfire missile discharge.
Wow.
Right? Nothing. That I know of, nothing can withstand a Hellfire missile. Well, okay, that's interesting. So, first of all, that's a lie. We've got all kinds of stuff that could withstand a Hellfire missile strike. Second of all, the Hellfire missile, it didn't explode. It didn't explode at all. It went right through the object, which we don't get a good picture of because you're censoring it, right? They can't show us what it actually looked like. They're just giving us a censored picture of a blob with a rocket that fires through it. So it's a total lie. I mean, it's a whitewash. Certainly, we have vehicles that can withstand Hellfire discharges because they're shielded, right? So maybe that's what happened, is a shielded vehicle that deflected the rocket. It's possible. Could also be, and not from let's say another world, but it's one of ours, right? Mm-hmm. We have advanced flying vehicles that use anti-gravity propulsion systems. And if you're using anti-gravity propulsion systems, you're creating a field around it that will protect you. So it's all a bunch of lies. It's just theater. So that somehow is connected to this. No, Nancy told me this morning there's a second comet, and it's not following the laws of nature. It's unpredictable, and it's going all over the place. Well, really, is there really a second comet, or maybe there's a whole bunch of them that you're just picking and choosing, right? And maybe they're holographic, or maybe you're masking what they really look like. But what this is getting towards, maybe some kind of a galactic revelation of some sort, where the archons in the shadows control the narrative. Mm-hmm. And they use it somehow or another as a spiritual revelation, which is extraterrestrially based, where they're controlling it. So it's extremely important to be able to be looking at these things through the vantage of the castle, which gives us seership, which allows us to see through all the deceptions that are being played out right now on the world stage. And I'm not going to tell you the details of this because it's up to the individual to decide for themselves what is truth and what isn't. And no one's going to tell you what truth is and what isn't. You have to be within that community. You have to be within that bastion. You have to be within, the confinements of that castle. You have to be a heretic, a Gnostic to the catechism or the narrative that's being told or being told us. And keep in mind too that there's 2 major sources of religion. One is coming from the Middle East. The other one's coming from Rome.
Mm.
I think they're both connected, but they're acting like they're not. And
Right.
they're the ones that are going to usher in all of this stuff. And they're still the ones that are at war against the truth.
Right. The
Still.
ultimate, and what is truth? An absolute truth. It's God. I mean, it's the essence of the battle, isn't it? If you can squash truth, which is the expression of God, like the truth of love, which is the expression of God, it's the ancient spiritual battle that's been here from forever, right? But it also seems that as we're talking about, not just for people who maybe necessarily were the early detectors of the patterns, I think things are getting weird enough that at least people can detect some weirdness. I'm not saying everybody's seeing that it's weird, but I'm seeing more layers of people scratching their heads saying something's not right about that, right? That is starting to have a bit of a chain reaction where, like in Wizard of Oz, the wizard behind the curtain, the wizard can't hide as much in front of more people, more and more people.
Well, and that was a story that was written by a theosophist who was trying to teach the children the realities of what, you know, theosophy was interesting. So theosophy was an externalized movement of an ancient wisdom cult, right? So maybe it was like the externalized version of, let's say, the Masons or the Masonic, organizations that existed behind the veil. So there was an effort by um, people who wanted to try to get some of this information out to the public regarding let's say the bigger picture of what was going on. Every single person or family that's involved with enslaving the world is part of some type of a cult. They're all involved in pagan worship. Now, what I think is going on is that you can call it Satanists or Luciferians. They're very much groups that align to one camp or another, but in the end, they all are connected at the top. So Satanism, Luciferianism, they play into the world religions, and they get us fighting over a bunch of stuff that we really shouldn't be fighting over. So they're promoting these basically duality and conflict and all of these other things,
Right,
right?
right.
And so right. So
Mm,
you asked what is truth, right?
mm.
You asked what is truth. And somebody else once asked what is truth? What is truth? And an answer was provided to that person, but it wasn't in words. So when Pilate asks Jesus what is truth, Jesus doesn't answer Pilate. He just stands there because he was a vessel for the Logos, and that truth was standing in front of Pilate in the manifestation, or it was manifesting through this man who was falsely accused, and so Pilate sees that, all of it in an instant, and he turns around and he says, "This man, I find no fault in this man. He's not guilty." Right? Because that's what the truth is. The truth doesn't have to be told to you. The
Right.
truth is,
The truth is,
and you're either aligned to it or you're not.
right,
Right? Right.
right.
So the
That's the
whole
frequency thing.
need,
That's part
the
of the
whole need,
frequency thing.
correct, but the whole need for an externalized authority through a religion or through a science or
Mm,
whatever to disseminate the truth to you is
right,
false.
right,
It might have been useful at one time in earlier parts of the age,
mm,
but the heretics, the Gnostics, the heretics the Cathars, the Albigensians, the Valdensians, all of these people, they figured it out that it was only serving to enslave them.
Mm.
That's all it is. And so, we're addicted to the media and we're glued to the set. I mean, even I am. I mean, even I gotta at least log on once a day to figure out, all right, what the heck's going on? Maybe I don't spend that much time, but I'm looking to see what's going on, right?
Right.
Only to hope that maybe something miraculous is going to happen to wake everyone else up. It's never going to happen, ever. Not through those channels. It won't
Mm.
happen. So it just isn't. It's not going to happen. And so they have to, we have to recognize truth for what it is. And I think that when we do, it has a far greater resonance
Mm.
and a far greater impact upon us
That's a important,
than
massively
anything that they
important
can
point.
manufacture. Right, than anything else that they can manufacture. Right.
The attunement to truth from within, from the inside out, from knowing, is more powerful than working to expose the darkness that would reveal truth, right? It's through the amplification of the expression and the knowing of truth that, in some ways, yeah, is just the kind of irregular warfare, if you will, that clears the veil, right? Where they completely lose control because enough of us remember.
Who would have thought that the truth it would be the whole focal point of this war? Who would have thought that? It's not. I mean, they tried with physical means to exterminate people, and that it doesn't really work because the souls keep coming back until this all plays itself out.
Right.
And that's how it is. It's karma that has to balance itself out. You can do what you want. You can kill somebody or you can marginalize somebody, but guess what? You've got karma to deal with. And you can't escape karma. You cannot escape karma,
No,
right?
no,
You
exactly.
can't escape karma. So that's coming back to
Oh.
haunt them, and that's coming into this new age, right? This new timeline. So one of the things I wanted to say
Mhm.
when you look talking about Luciferians and the Satanists is that their church is answering to somebody or something, right? But I sense it's probably draconian or Orion beings from another world that probably have a very strong control over them and a strong relationship with these beings who are engaged in some form of astral religion themselves.
Right.
Because the truth is that there are astral forces that are out there that you can connect to empower yourself to become greater than, let's say, a person who's still living in the darkness or in the shadows or in ignorance. And instead of helping them, you take advantage of them, aligning yourself with these astral energies, these draconian energies, these Orion energies. And I can assure you that that's who these groups are answering to, some otherworldly forces that are still trying to enslave us,
What's
right?
that biblical verse?
That's
We're
what the Gnostics
not
need.
fighting flesh and blood. It's what's the quote from the Bible? These there's something about we're not fighting beings of flesh and blood. It's like the astral
I think
forces.
Paul said it, but I think Paul said it.
Yes, but
Yeah,
I think that's what a
yeah.
lot of people have to. That's kind of the also the invitation of these times for those who hear the invitation, the summoning from within, is to make our picture bigger. It can look like any kind of duality or division, pitting this group against this group, and that's how it's been played for so long. You get the people to fight themselves, and they fight the battles for you and keep the world in this like crazy illusion. But I think also what's happening is the more people can make their picture bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, you do start to see it's not about this group against that group. It's not about flesh and blood, right? It's not about that. It's about forces far greater that have used us as pawns in a bigger chess game, right? In a much bigger spiritual battle over ultimately, I don't know that I've said it this way, over truth itself with a capital T, over God itself, right? With a capital G, right? The absolute, the ultimate creator of creation. But that's how, I mean, ascension in so many ways is exiting this false matrix. And that's making our picture big enough to see that there's even a matrix to exit out of, right? That this isn't the true creation, right? You have to wake up.
You do have to wake up, but I think when we exit this matrix, we just go into another one
Oh, they have
because we're
others.
corporeal or we're individuated, right? So we also have to have the wisdom to look at the overall experience
Okay.
and say, well, all right, so what did we learn over the last 2,000, 3,000, 6,000, 10,000 years? What did we learn? I mean, we almost blew up the world in the Atlantean experience, and then we went through this darker period of time, and we and maybe our souls are incarnating into this plane of consciousness from a higher evolved plane, which means higher evolved worlds where we can manifest things very easily, and where there's
Mm.
greater security and there's greater freedom and there's greater justice. But we're coming back here to learn more lessons, to gather more pearls. So we also have to understand that these enslaving forces from the highest perspective is serving a purpose which is beneficial to all souls involved.
Huh.
That's the experience that we have to understand. When we can understand that draconian forces have value, right? Even though the individuals who are part of the part of the legions, part of the oh, what's the right word? Minions, part
Minion.
of their minions, they're useless. They're minions because they have no thought. They're just automatons.
Right.
But the leaders of those automatons, they have value. They have tremendous value. And we have to understand how to integrate all of these lessons that we've learned. So again, Python was an adversarial being that Apollo slayed, was a valuable being. It taught us great lessons, and was it was mourned by the pantheon of the gods and goddesses when she was slain. So we have to understand that we have to integrate all of these things now. We have to learn our lessons. We have to integrate all of these things. I think that's what the martyrs have learned, is that just because you're on the side of, in your perspective, righteousness, doesn't protect you from these outcomes. Neither does it make it really right. It's just a question of age, of time, of circumstances. The lessons have been learned, the pearls have been gathered, and now it's time to change the matrix into a different experience that will allow us to expound upon these lessons that we learned, that will allow us to expand upon these lessons that we learned, so that we're not constantly being murdered and killed and confined in every time we oppose, let's say, an agenda which is no longer valid because it was part of another age which is not dying. They know it's dying, and eventually it will die out, and there may be a remnant of that continues to exist for a time, maybe in another plane or another world, or maybe the Orions just pull up stakes and go, or maybe there's like Rudolf Steiner said, a false eighth sphere. which is created through a technological explosion, where if souls want to continue to have this experience, they can have it. But Gaia herself and the natural energies of the earth allegedly are ascending or moving on, right? And that's where the martyrs, that's where the heretics and the Gnostics and the Cathars and all these other people who've learned these lessons will have a chance to manifest and express, um, a world that has been forged by their experiences. And so what's really interesting, and I put it at the end of the essay, is that there was a second prophecy that was made. It's really a second statement that was made.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's really long. And I found it, somebody had, I can't remember who did it, but somebody, some scholarly, beautiful person, interpreted it or translated it, and they put it on their webpage. So I referenced the webpage, and I quoted the second prophecy, and it was about the rise again of the Church of Love, or the Cathar Church. But church is a bad word. I mean, it doesn't quite encompass what they were trying to say. And the question is who authored it? Who authored this beautiful,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Who's the source of that?
I think it was the troubadours, a troubadour or a group of troubadours that preserved this, that created it. So the troubadours were very much a huge part of that experience. And they were the ones who, that basically the history was all destroyed, like the Gnostics, and everything was rewritten and everything was suppressed. But the troubadours were the ones who were writing the songs, and they were creating the stories and the poems. And a lot of the fragments of what they were doing were preserved. So the truth is embedded within the songs.
Wow.
And the poems, of the Cathars. That's where it actually exists. And in some of the old edifices and in the caves, they're etched in the stone, or they're scrawled on the stone, so that they try to immortalize those. And they're little blurbs. But I do believe that whatever this was, it's longer, was probably written by the same inspired, voices or souls. And so it talks about the rise again of this movement, of this world movement. But, it basically talks about, they use this term a lot, the truth of love. The truth of love rises again. The truth of love rises again. And so it's a form of knowing that transcends conditional living, which is what the third density was all about. And even the part of the fourth density was all about living under conditions. Everything is conditioned. Our love is conditioned, and our work environments are conditioned. Everything is conditioned. Everyone is doing things for a reward, right? For a condition.
Right.
And what they're basically saying is that this is going to be an unconditional existence in the truth of love. So it's beautiful. I think there's about 25 different things that they write down. How the borders of nations will dissolve. It doesn't matter what religion you're a part of. It's basically like the law of one in very many ways. It sounds like the law of one. But if your interests are for humanity, and your actions are for humanity, and you're doing things not for rewards, but for the sake of doing it and living it within this unconditional plane of existence, then you're part of this community. And the community, I would say, is part of the castle.
And you
It's
say
part of this
castle community, right? Or community castle.
good idea. It's a good way to state that. It's a community castle community, a community of knowers,
Yes.
that are now finally coming back, not through roost as much as coming back home to claim um their castle, and basically claim what belongs to them, right? But we can only claim what belongs to us when the landscape changes in resonance to us, right?
Hmm.
And I think we're helping that happen now. And we can start to create these communities. We always talk about it. That's one of the reasons why we're talking here today. But it's an ongoing process,
Hmm.
you know.
Yes, it is.
I don't, so that's I think that's the second prophecy. And that's rising now, because again, the second prophecy is supposed to happen when the laurel turns green on the ashes of the martyrs.
So interesting that for a good number of years, in a lot of the messages I was sharing, I just kept saying, together we rise, right? Together we rise. And, you don't always know the knowing that you know, but it comes through you. It is of you, right? I feel like there's a lot of people who listen to this channel, listen to this account, and love the podcast that we do together because within the people listening to a podcast like this, there is the pulse of the knowing and the remembering, right? And, it is a frequency thing and it is a magnetism thing. Um, and it does the
Yeah,
work
and
for us. It does the work for us in a sense. If you will keep listening, if you keep going within the world is going to keep swirling, right? All this stuff is going to keep
oh,
swirling,
very much so.
right? But your
Yes.
hearing, the true inner hearing, is when you can still that. You can get to a place of stillness, even for 5 minutes, and you tune in. That's to me how we find each other, right? That's how we're remembering, and that's how we're amplifying, and that's how we're creating it at a collective level, at a soul level that we might not necessarily even meet in physical form in a physical place. I know there's great value in that, but I think as souls there's this collective communication in that castle community that's happening, that pulses. We see it in this human resonance in our own ways, right? We see it in is at frequency. There's something so beautiful in that way, and where they used to take to the battlefield with swords and all kinds of terrible things, and we're just playing it out again now. But a lot of us know it's like somebody just posted a couple things that I wanted to mention. One was talking about the game of duality and the chessboard and the black and white squares or whatever, and you're not going to win the war when you're still on the game board. You have to exit the game, right? You just like exit the game. That's also kind of what we're talking about. The true win is this alignment with the truth of God. It's that return home to the truth of God, which is a frequency that we find within. It's this inner journey that we go on. Um, but it is a real destination of where our souls are moving towards for those that hear the pulse of that. And otherwise, it's very easy to get swept up in all the duality speak, that fork tongued speech that, like, nobody wins in the war of words, the war of media, the war of propaganda, the war of any of that. But it's a refinement. You know what I mean? It really is an inner journey. It's an attunement. And we are instruments of the divine if we'll listen for what the messages that we see all around us. And I don't think anybody's been immune to the things that trigger us, right? It's all part of the journey. Those triggers aren't wrong, they're communications, right? And so I've been certainly had um, just my own experiences, I would say even accelerated this year, of learning lessons of what true truth looks like, and and masking of truth, even among communities of people who would profess light or profess to be humanitarians. It's, everything's been infiltrated. So you have to have this inner refinement to be able to see through the layers of patterns, because I also think the archons that we've talked about today, they are crafty. I mean, they've studied humanity for a long time, and they can be like 6 layers deep in their deception, where you're getting deeper and deeper into a community or deeper into whatever it might be until you wake up. But all of us know, when you recognize the pattern, what did you say? Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's where, no matter how deep we've gotten into something, no matter how engaged we got into some tug of war in the chessboard that we thought we left, at any point you can leave the game. At any point, your eyes can be opened again and you can leave the game. And we may have to choose that again and again. It's not once and done. We may have to do that again and again right now, because our light is precious. Our light is precious. And it's very sought after by whoever the archons are that continue to play, continue to try and set the game pieces to keep the battle going. So something else I wanted to bring up, I cannot remember the exact quote, but in the series, it's called Once Upon a Time. It's very mystical, fantastical story, nursery rhyme characters or whatever, but in like live action kind of stuff. But spoiler alert if anybody hasn't seen it, but there is this scene towards the end of all the series where you've got the heroes and the villains fighting each other, the duality throughout the whole thing. And there's a moment where they say, like, only when basically darkness or evil or the villains do what they must do, and only when the light or the heroes do what they must do, basically can, like, truth and love and harmony be restored. Only when both sides do what they are destined to do can this, balance be restored somehow. And so it is interesting, because I think you were kind of getting at that too, that the darkness there are lessons from what the darkness must do, right? For us to go to another level in playing in another dimensional realm, to bring those lessons with us, right? We have to learn these lessons. So it's not just in vanquishing the darkness. It's when both sides of the duality do what they must do, and we learn the lessons of what that bigger picture looks like, right? Do we ascend or move into another dimensional realm of our creation from being masters of the wisdom of what we've expressed? But we have to see it through. We have to see it through. And there's no free passes, as we know. And there isn't necessarily even pointing a finger and saying that guy or that community or that. It's a whole series of lots and lots of choice points that lead us to this place that we get more and more comfortable. What did you say? Being the keeper of the castle or the inheritor of the castle, right? With the responsibility that goes with being the seeker and the knower and the hoster of the castle. And maybe that's how dimensional realms are created. I mean, maybe that is how we don't even know how realms of soul experiences are created. Maybe they're created by different castles in, you know what I mean? That people listening within that align with the knowings that we know through time. And then we get to host the experience of creation of people learning in new and different ways. I don't know. It's just fascinating. But what I love about where you and I travel is that if you're just looking at the picture flat on the page that you've been given, and you don't know that a lot of what we've been given, whether it's history, whether it's religion, whether it's finance, or as far back as anybody wants to study, still we're in a realm of a complete illusion. And a lot of what we've been sold and told is like a whole bag of lies. And you have to wake up and saying, who wrote this? And look at the source of that. And then who wrote that, or who expressed that, or who told us that? And only in going as a seeker do you find, right? So I think that's also part of the grand return. And it sounds like the astrology Well, things are really in many ways. I mean, the experience of the three castles is pretty robust. The last time we met, I think we talked about three yachts. Was it part of the incursion, or I can't remember, but that, you know,
No, it was an interesting manifestation of Fibonacci sequence that was made out of three yards, which it looked like to me the
figure,
symbol of Aquarius, which
okay.
was based on the famous drawing of Leonardo da Vinci of the man, with his arms out, right? So there was that. So no, I was also going to say that you mentioned silence, and so the castle is like a bastion in an inner sanctuary too, and that maybe that's where our strength really lies, within the silence of the edifice itself. I've built structures, and when I build something and then I stand in it, I can feel a resonance or an energy that is reflected in the intention that was put into the structure itself. So it really is a sacred space. So we all have within us a temple. And I've mentioned this a number of times, where I've seen it as a temple or a temple garden, where it would definitely fit within this motif uh, of this castle, or this bastion, or this fortress. So there's that. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that this whole thing with Apollo and the dragon itself plays out over time, right? So again, as I said at the beginning, it was a further separation of the masculine and the feminine polarities. But this plays out throughout Gnostic and heretical insights, is that we're struggling or moving towards unification of polarity, of the polarities again, towards unity. And in unity, we develop unity consciousness. Apollo is a big part of that, because he was a god of the light, a god of the sun, a logos, a logoic type of god. And the divine feminine plays a huge part of it, because that's really kind of like the natural forces of this earth, right? And so when we marry those two things together, and in many ways we have to, it's like the most egotistical of all the gods is Apollo. So we're not destroying the ego, we're healing the ego.
Mm.
And the only way that we can heal the ego is when we marry that to the spirit, and allow the spirit um, to um, to take the lead in all of this. I mean, that's really what I think it's all about. And that's one of the things that Thoreau is saying, is that you can, it takes a lot of ingenuity to manifest a castle, but it really has to come originally from a divine inspiration.
Yes.
And that divine inspiration comes literally through the soul, through the spirit, which is considered more of a feminine principle. And then the manifestation in the physical plane is considered more egotistically. But that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to heal ourselves. We're trying to mitigate or ameliorate or alleviate the conflict that's been going on for so long. And it's finally time for us. I mean, the whole Cathar experiences was based on the marriage between Magdalene and Jesus. They believed that actually existed, or that at least they were consorts. They may have even had children. I mean, are those metaphysical children? Were they really kids? Well, I don't know. I'm not going to even get into a discussion about it. But the fact is that
Mm.
any unification, any grand unification like that between two magnificent souls that are bringing in these cosmic energies, is bound to have offspring.
Mm.
We could consider ourselves as the offspring of that union too. That's
Yes.
what they were trying to do,
Yes.
right? So whether they were physical kids or whether we were all just part of this ginormous family where, we're all trying to accomplish the same thing and live within that same principle, I think is where this is all going.
I just felt that when you were saying whether we're all part of the same family. However, that manifests, it's a frequency family. It's a
Right.
family, it's a frequency of resonance at a higher level. That
Well,
is,
that's what love is. It's a sympathetic vibrational energy.
yeah.
And so it's in sympathy to itself.
Mm,
So and that's exactly what it is. It's a resonance of frequency that we dial into.
yeah.
And once you're dialed in, you don't want to dial out of it. I mean,
No.
it's really, and because that is really the universal force or the universal power of this existence. It's actually love.
Yeah.
Love is the life force of everything.
Mm, mm. I love this discussion. I love where we can go deeply into these places and the insights that you bring through from the things you see and feel and are from your gnosis that you're aware of. And it helps, I think, illuminate it for so many of us. So number one, I'm grateful for this discussion and thank you. We will continue these kinds of conversations. I wanted to double back though before we close out today. I don't know if you had more to say. Was it transcendent cultures? Transcend cultures? You had said to remind you.
Oh no, I covered it. I
You
covered it.
did. It
Yeah,
came
that
back in. So you
how
said,
everything is interconnected. So the
yes,
Celts, who came from this one area, really in southern France and Europe, and then there was this diaspora of the Celts, these modern humans, and it is all interconnected because all of these cultures are interconnected. You may say, well, how can the ancient Greeks be connected to the Celts of England but they were, and there were Celts in Italy, and there were Celts in North Africa. They were all over the place, right?
yeah.
In southern France. So they were all interconnected, and we still are
And
interconnected
so
for
are we? Yeah, exactly.
right.
Exactly. And there's the remembering. It's like a remembering to me, it's like the remembering and knowing. They're two sides of the same coin. We remember to know, and we know what we remember. Or marrying all of those fragments and fractions back to ourselves and then with each other, right? That just like vast interconnectedness that this illusion has been doing its best to make us think that we're not, right? So it's all part of this grand return. And I appreciate also what you showed us in the equinox, just the insights today, because we're in the last quarter of 2025, and there's a potency to all that we're seeing. And while the potency, we all look, we all, check in with social media in our own ways, and then we get back and center to what we know, right? That's the story circulating out there. We listen for maybe bits and pieces of patternings. I listen more and more of the patterns that I see to ground and center and maybe even be inspired by my own knowing, my own remembering. So the patterns, most of the time, that I see when I do, we all scroll or scan social media, but to go back and take it back inside of what do I know about that from my soul's wisdom, from my, right, the way my soul can read all of that through my lessons through time. And then how does that want to inspire me to be a keeper or seeker of a castle, right? To lead with the light that I have to make this world and, God's creation a better place to be, right? So, as infinite eternal beings, I want to keep having fun and exploring in creating from inspiration versus creating from terror or creating from stress or trying to outrun something that otherwise would cause fear or something. So we're all learning this discipline inside. How can we take the information of this world that we live in and then center inside and fortify the gnosis, the light, the truth of the castle that we are, right? in our very existence, in our presence here. And there's no accident for all of us, those listening to a podcast like this, but everybody on the planet, right? Like you said, what did you talk about? The first greatness was being here, right? Being here,
Yeah,
being in form at this time. You're
yeah.
already experiencing the greatness, but then we can take it to another level. And I think that's the task of the challenges of these times, right? Can we take all that and bring it to another level of frequency where we can manifest a magnificence far beyond what this illusion keeps showing us, basically. Powerful. Powerful. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thrice great. Yeah.
That's great.
Thrice
Yes.
great. That is definitely something to marinate on, right? In these times. Well, thank you. Hopefully, I'll edit this and be able to get this out so it's a timely message for people as we pass through these eclipses coming. And we're in the window now. And so, thank you. Thank you, Paul. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And so, I just want to welcome everybody who gathered with us to explore all of these insights. And I celebrate and honor this weaving inside yourself, this integration of what we're all tasked with doing in these times. And we'll see you hopefully again soon with more brilliance and insights in 2025 before we close out this year from Paul. And we see more of what the map of the astrology and everything else, the gnosis, the knowing that's emerging from within. So I'll close this out by saying again, together we rise. Thank you for joining us. Blessings, everyone. I'll see you soon.